It's winter 1980. We're in the small town of Lyngby. 19-year-old Jean Hilliard is driving home after meeting with a friend. She takes a shortcut and turns into an icy, slippery road. In the dark, she loses control of the rear-wheel drive car. The vehicle crashes into a ditch. Emergency lights, snowfall, night, and a hard frost. Jean gets out of the vehicle. She's wearing only a light winter coat, mittens, and cowboy boots. The air temperature is much lower than in a freezer. Jean is sure that her friend lives nearby, so she goes that way. She climbs a high hill and realizes she's taken the wrong route. It seems she's gotten lost. The girl wanders a couple more miles and notices her other friend's house in the distance. Freezing, she walks there. Then everything turns black. Jean loses consciousness. The next morning, rancher Wally Nelson wakes up in a great mood. It's the holiday season. There's a winter fairy tale outside the window. He leaves his house and notices the body of Jean Hilliard lying just a few feet from his porch. Wally approaches the girl, shakes her, and is horrified. Her body is stiff and cold like frozen wood. Her eyes are open and don't move. Her hair is frozen. She just doesn't look alive. But Wally sees that she's still breathing. Jean has managed to survive. Wally wants to put her in his car to bring her to the doctor, but the girl's body doesn't bend and can't fit into the auto. It feels like a statue. He takes a bigger car and rushes to the hospital as fast as possible. The doctors take Jean, but they don't think she has any chance to make it. Her hand is so hard and frozen that no needle can penetrate it. A low temperature, glassy eyes, and muscles as hard as stone are all the results of emergency mode. Her body has directed all the blood to the vital organs to ensure their functioning. That's why other parts of her body look so lifeless, and her skin and muscles don't react to anything. The doctors decide to put heating pads on the girl to warm her up. Her family hopes for her recovery, but right now, all they can do is just wait. Frostbite is so dangerous because all that frozen liquid begins to expand. Fill a small bottle with water and put it in the freezer for a few hours. Then take it out, and you'll see that the bottle seems to have expanded or even cracked because of the increased volume of the liquid. The same thing happens inside our bodies. We consist of almost 70% water. When it freezes, its particles turn into ice crystals and tear cell membranes. Ice fragments can stretch and destroy tissue. This is called frostbite. Also, our body can slow down all internal processes in extreme cold conditions to save strength and energy. The heart makes fewer beats, and the lungs stop consuming lots of oxygen. Metabolism slows down. It happened with Jean, and perhaps it is what saved her life that day. She was lying in the snow in severe frost for about 6 hours. But why didn't the ice particles start destroying her cell membranes? How did her body withstand such damage and manage to survive? Back at the hospital, doctors are happy to watch Jean get better. Warm blood spreads through the frozen vessels and brings her body back to life. Surprisingly, ice crystals haven't damaged her muscles and skin. A few hours later, the girl regains consciousness. By noon, she starts talking. Jean doesn't know what happened. She remembers walking to her friend's house and then waking up in the hospital. What worries her most right now is that her father's car is somewhere in a ditch. As it turns out, the girl fell down and crawled on all fours to Wally Nelson's house. She doesn't remember it, but apparently her brain activated the survival instinct that night. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to crawl the last few feet. Jean passed out at the door and stayed there for 6 hours. Doctors examine the girl and understand that she's completely healthy. Soon, she's discharged from the hospital. This case isn't unique. One professor of emergency medicine, David Plummer, said he'd seen about 12 similar cases over the past 10 years when patients had survived severe frostbite. Jean returns home and finds out that she has become famous. People write about her in newspapers, want to interview her, and film documentary shows. Her case has attracted the attention of many doctors around the world, but no one has been able to find out exactly how she managed to survive. In the case of humans, such recoveries seem like an absolute miracle. But many creatures of the natural world can adapt their bodies to extreme conditions. One of them is the tree frog. These animals live mainly in temperate and tropical parts of Eurasia. Sometimes they have to contend with cold weather. Their body injects glucose into the bloodstream when they feel they're freezing, and the content of their cells turns into syrup. Sugar lowers the freezing point of water. So, tree frogs have adapted to such conditions. The water outside their cells can freeze. Their bodies can get as hard as ice cubes, but they will be alive, feeling great. Then, when it gets warmer, they fully recover. The blood fills their body and puts all their muscles in motion. But one of the most amazing animals that can withstand freezing temperatures is the ghoulish icefish. It's transparent and somewhat like a jellyfish. It swims in the dark, cold Antarctic waters. The ghoulish icefish feels comfortable there because of the antifreeze in its body. More precisely, it's a unique substance that is like antifreeze in its functions. This liquid doesn't allow the animal's cells, organs, and the whole body to freeze. There are no red blood cells in the fish's blood that transport oxygen throughout its body. This is the only vertebrate with such a superpower. There are organisms on our planet that use the cold to prolong their life. Scientists have found some of them in the ice of Siberia. Those are microscopic, multi-celled creatures, like small worms, that can live in a freezer for about 10 years. But the worms from Siberia were about 24,000 years old. The scientists transported them to the laboratory and thawed them. The worms came to life and began to multiply immediately after all those centuries of sleep. Their bodies can go into cryptobiosis. This is when an entire frozen organism has minimal vital functions. The analysis showed that the worms could stay in this mode for tens of thousands of years. And there are many such animals on our planet. Also, these creatures are some of the world's most resistant to radiation. They are practically invulnerable. Now back to our story. It's possible that Jean Hilliard's body went into short cryptobiosis. Perhaps there was some non-freezing liquid in the girl's blood, but no one knows for sure. These days, she has an ordinary job and almost doesn't remember that day. Further research on this topic can help scientists create special medicines that can help in freezing temperatures. Just imagine that you could safely go outside in the winter wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Steam would be coming off your body, and the ice under your feet would be melting. You'd feel hot inside. A dream, perhaps. But realistically, winter coat manufacturers would, of course, never allow it. When you think of theme parks, you normally imagine laughter and fun times. But once they're closed and abandoned, now that's a whole different story. Let's take a look at some of them. You decide to take a trip to New Orleans to visit Six Flags. When you arrive there, you discover the theme park is deserted. The sign that says "Closed for Storm" is still standing. You're feeling adventurous, so you let yourself pass the crackling gates. Is it chilly in here, or is it just me? You walk past a swimming pool, and it looks like there's someone in there. You get closer and, oh no, it's an alligator. Better run and leave that thing alone. You keep exploring the site. The park took inspiration from the city's French architecture, but today the buildings are dirty, the windows are all shattered, and there are unusual items everywhere. Say, what is this vintage rollerblade doing here? The park closed during the hurricane, and it was left standing under 7 feet of water. No wonder the metal rides are all rusty now. This carousel doesn't look too inviting to me. We'll have to come back another time. Hey, at least you got some cool-looking pictures, right? Let's make this next one even more exciting. Imagine you plan to visit Data Park at night. Somewhere in the countryside of Belgium, you'll find a creepy theme park derelict from many years ago. You have nothing with you but the floodlight on your phone. You see the entrance of a bridge and start to make your way across. The bridge sways and creaks. Just FYI, you are crossing one of the longest hanging bridges in Europe. You made it through. Whew. The surrounding woods are terrifying, and several deserted attractions start popping up along the way. The forest has taken this twirling swing set. This huge slide would probably break if you tried to use it now. The park is in terrible condition. No wonder they closed it down due to security reasons. Best to leave it now and come back in the daylight. Your next stop is Wonderland Eurasia, also known as Anka Park in Turkey. The theme park opened in March 2019 but closed shortly after. Once inside the gigantic complex, you stumble upon what looks like an empty warehouse but ends up being an indoor roller coaster. Everything was left intact and is as good as new. You even take a quick sit on one of the roller coaster carts, perfectly lined up for the next ride. If you're feeling really adventurous, you can walk on the rails of the indoor coaster. Just be careful not to fall down. Oh, over there are the Flintstones. It's almost like a childhood deja vu here in the youngsters section of the park. On the horizon, you see what looks like the Jurassic World and decide to check it out. There are neglected statues of huge T-Rexes and fake skeletons of dinosaurs lying across the floor. Unlike the other derelict parks, everything here is new, which makes it all the more strange. Nara Dreamland was meant to be Japan's Disney World, but the project failed over time. Today, it's inhabited by moist ivies and strange birds. To get in, you'll pass a drawbridge and head into a pastel-colored castle. Your heart might beat faster than usual when you pass a fog-covered roller coaster. Was that meant to be the Matterhorn? Yup. Everything about this place says you shouldn't be there. Tossed on the park's floor, you'll see reels of tickets and misconfigured stuffed animals. How about walking into an empty diner? It's bizarre how the tables and stools are still in place. Strolling through what was once a gift shop, you'll see empty shelves and an old-school cash machine. I'd say you better leave before anything comes out of here. Now, if I say Joyland, what do you imagine? The name says it all, right? But if you decide to visit Joyland today, I bet you'll have a very chilling time. Down in Wichita, Kansas, you'll find a once famous but now empty theme park filled with eerie sights. A pale blue slide in the middle of a forest? Check. Empty warehouses straight out of a horror movie? Check. A wacky shack that looks truly wacky? You bet. But if you visit it on a good sunny day, I'd say the park is weird but still has some beauty. Joyland was built in the late 1940s. It carries a vintage aura that goes well with the neglected atmosphere. Hey, look at this rusty yellow Ferris wheel with a stripped ticket box in front. I dare say it's almost charming. The Magic Harbor Amusement Park is not that magical after all. Just outside of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you'll find an old theme park left to nature. Here, bumper cars are not bumping anymore. If you get into a hedge maze, you'll probably never find your way out of it. I'm not sure what you'll see running around amongst the rusty rides, so good luck if you're planning a visit. If you're looking for somewhere to cool down on a hot and sunny afternoon, how about Disney's River Country? Just kidding. You're definitely not going to want to get in the water there. The park was built in the 1970s and closed in 2001. Pay a visit to the Whitewater Rapids on foot instead of floating down the fake river. You'll have about 330 feet to stroll along a very bumpy pathway. Maybe you'll see hanging tires that served as swing sets out in the bay. You can even try zip lining if you trust the cable. To add a little more creepy to this story, the park was closed down due to a dangerous bacteria that thrived in warm bodies of water. Are you sure you don't fancy a swim? When you think Italy, I bet you think pasta and pizza, and a leaning tower somewhere. Well, in the south of Italy sits the empty Miraculous amusement park. The entrance still says welcome, but people stopped coming a few years ago. The site is covered in grass everywhere. The toy-like architecture is still there. Beneath the forgotten rails of an open-air roller coaster, you can almost hear the screams of excitement of people on the ride. This part of the park is usually prohibited, but there's no one around to control that now. It might be scary to be here, but adrenaline sure is running high. This next theme park is vacant only during a certain time of the year, but it still gives the true heebie-jeebie vibes. You have to catch a train from the city and travel to the end of the line till you reach the park. Coney Island is a seasonal park, open only from the middle of spring to the middle of fall. If you want to catch its unnerving vibe, you have to visit in winter. Then, you'd walk through the rows of empty stalls with the fairy string lights still hanging above your head. It looks frozen in time as all the rides lay shut down. Speaking of which, sometimes it gets frozen for real. Under many inches of snow, Coney Island is a little less disturbing. Then again, snow does have that effect on landscapes, but the park is empty and deserted nonetheless. I bet it's a great photo op. Now, be sure to tell me in the comments which abandoned amusement park you found the creepiest. Hey, you know me, I won't be checking any of these out. I'll let you go first. You're hiking in the wilderness, looking for a safe spot to set up camp. All you can hear are leaves and branches cracking under your footsteps. Some squirrels are running up a tree over there. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. You notice something weird in the distance in between the trees. It kind of looks like a concrete structure of some sort. Weird. At this point, you're at least 20 miles deep in the woods and there are no nearby towns or villages, as far as you know. So you decide to go off the trail with your friends to get a closer look. But as you get nearer, you realize that it's actually a 12-foot-tall staircase and it's leading to nowhere. What's it doing there in the middle of literally nowhere? And it doesn't even lead to anything. You put on your Sherlock Holmes cap and investigate. So maybe there used to be an old house or mansion here that collapsed over the years and the only thing left is this staircase. But weirdly enough, after circling the bizarre structure, you realize there's no trace of any ruins or even foundations. It's like someone just sliced a staircase off their house, cake style, and plopped it here for no reason. Okay. You and your friends aren't really into getting a whole lot closer. Something feels wrong. The longer you look at this weird structure, the more you feel a super creepy presence. Something tells you you should probably leave the area as fast as possible. You can't explain the feeling or take your eyes off the creepy staircase. You take out your phone and snap some pictures. Then, after a lot of hesitation, you take a few steps closer and notice that the stairs don't seem to be all that ancient, a few decades old at best. There's moss growing out from some cracks. Your friends have had enough. They ditch you and run back off to the trail, leaving you alone on the staircase. You put your foot carefully on the first step. Wham! Adrenaline rush. As you ascend to the top, someone touches your shoulder. You jump and turn around. All you see is black. As weird as this sounds, discoveries of random staircases illogically found in the woods are surprisingly common. Some are made of wood, others are bricks or stones. Some look ancient, while others look like they were finished yesterday. The one thing they all have in common, they all lead to absolutely nowhere, and they're all found in super mysterious locations. One of the most famous ones is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire. A long medieval-looking staircase made of stones with Roman arches in the middle of the woods. It's believed to have been part of Madame Antoinette Sherry's castle. She was a big singer back in Paris. The castle dates back about 100 years, and it was later discovered again in 1962. This time, there was nothing but a staircase. Another mysterious ancient staircase dates back to 9,000 years ago. It's in a forest in Italy. It looks like a series of stairs that led to a tiny platform at the top. Why go through all the trouble of building the thing if it leads to nowhere? Well, some experts think it could have been some sort of ritual tower, but your guess is as good as theirs. Some of the more modern staircases found in the woods also have an added bonus. They come with their own urban legends. Gee, would that be a 2-story or 3-story staircase? One of the most popular stories comes from the Philippines, where a forest ranger called Torkik allegedly went out on one of his routine patrols to look for missing people deep in the local jungle. That's where he claims he found some seriously out-of-place stone staircases. They even had weird markings on them. To get a better look at what was around him, he decided to climb up one of them. Just then, he was approached by a vicious stray dog that forced him further up the stairs. A few hours later, he came back to the village. Only thing was, he had been missing for 5 years. Was that staircase a time-traveling portal? Another account allegedly dates back to the 1940s, around the time of the Roswell UFO mystery. A man who claimed to be a scientist was sent to assist in investigating one of the many animal-related cases that kept popping up. Little did he know, this 1 to 2 week investigation would end up lasting 6 months. His team encountered a random wooden staircase in the woods that seemed to emit some type of frequency. They camped around 100 feet from it that night, but the next morning it vanished. All that was left was a black burn mark where the staircase was. 2 days later, it reappeared out of nowhere, 160 feet from its original location. The team wanted to get a sample of the wood to send it off to the lab. There was one problem. No matter how hard they tried, it was impossible to chip off a piece. The wood from the staircase was apparently indestructible. These weird mystery stairs have been around since ancient Cambodia. Right in the middle of the jungle is an abandoned 2,000-foot-long staircase leading to, nowhere. According to experts, this staircase was built about 1,000 years ago. They don't know for sure, but they think it led to an ancient city. Sadly, over the years, that city is now completely covered by the dense jungle. Maybe it was an important meeting spot for travelers and merchants coming from all over the continent. Well, back to your story. You feel a strange presence behind you. You turn around, probably one of your friends snuck up on you or something. But then you realize there was no one behind you. You're the only one around. You freak out. Something is definitely wrong here. So you rush down the stairs and bolt back to your friends, panting and startled. You start to tell your friends what happened, but they don't believe you. They think you're just trying to scare them even more. But the emotion on your face, it looks legit. There's real panic in your eyes, the kind you just can't fake. Shadow or wind or whatever that thing was, your fear's real. You all agree that you should stay away from the stairs, and it's probably best if you go back home, right now. I guess camping out there overnight just wasn't meant to be. As soon as you get home, you open your phone and check out your gallery. But no, you scroll through photo after photo. The staircase, it isn't there. None of the pictures have any staircases in them. Just a small, flat clearing with nothing but trees around, no weird shadows, nothing. Your friends have the same experience. Your eye twitches and you look over your left shoulder. You're in the safety of your own home, but you suddenly feel the same presence you felt on that staircase. Oh no! Everything goes black. But you can relax. Most of these stories are just urban legends, told to give you the heebie-jeebies. The internet has a way of spreading rumors faster than the speed of light. Most of these stairs might have even been built on purpose just recently. One weekend woodshop project, a couple of photos, and you too could be a sensation on every urban legend website. Then you just tear it down, take a photo to show it magically disappeared, and just like that, you're an internet superstar. But let's say you find some real stairs on your weekend camping trip. They're most likely the remnants from an old house or a cabin that got demolished or just collapsed after it was abandoned. Hey, it's 2021. There's a logical explanation for just about everything these days. That presence you felt was most likely your own mind playing tricks on you. When you see something in real life that looks like something you saw on a website or scary movie, your mind starts to work overtime, and you can actually see something or feel something that's not even there. That's what some people say happens when you get hypnotized. You want to see something so bad, and you do. That's probably what happened. Or was it?
The SCP Foundation is a secret organization that has one goal: to secure, contain, and protect the world from bizarre creatures and objects. The secret bases of this organization are hidden all over the world, and each of them contains scary, dangerous, harmless, miraculous, and simply crazy objects. And now, you'll see some of the weirdest. Object SCP-410. This is a colony of 14 individual beetles, similar to Scarabaeus of different colors, from light blue to dark emerald. At first glance, they look like ordinary insects, but soon you notice that these bugs don't feed on leaves, larvae, and other food. They eat mistakes in a text.
What?
Put a paper with some text containing spelling or grammar mistakes and syntactic errors inside the terrarium with object SCP-410. The bugs run up to misspelled words or punctuation errors and eat them. 20 minutes later, the beetles secrete corrected letters or words from their bodies. This way, they completely edit the text. One member of SCP-410 can eat about 25,000 errors per day. The beetles can live without incorrect texts for about 2 days. Then they fall into a state of hibernation. To revive them, you need to put a text containing at least 50 errors next to them. Object SCP-2157 is a mysterious 200 square foot piece of land found in a forest in Japan. People are standing in different poses on this territory. 20 men and 21 women. They're all of different weights and heights. Their feet are on the ground, and their faces are turned to the west. People react to external stimuli. They blink, flinch, and get scared. And still, they're standing there, motionless like trees. They start screaming if somebody tries to lift them off the ground. But soil analysis has shown that SCP-2157 objects have no physical connection to the land. Their feet are in no way connected to the soil. A body scan has shown some earth inside their stomach. As soon as an SCP Foundation employee enters their territory, the people turn their heads in their direction and just stare at them. As soon as the outsider leaves, the people start looking to the west again. Monitoring of this object continues. Object SCP-621. It's hypnotic tulips. They look like ordinary tulips, but have bioluminescence. They get energy and other nutrients from the water and glow purple, blue, or green. This glow has a hypnotic effect on people and all nearby living beings. Bees, for example, start pollinating only these flowers, ignoring all other plants, which speeds up the reproduction of the tulips. Herbivores and other natural enemies avoid SCP-621. All this makes tulips a rapidly spreading species. While growing, SCP-621 takes all the nutrients from other plants growing nearby. It depletes the soil and consumes a lot of water. Under the influence of SCP-621, a person tends to take care of the plants and do everything to make them live as long as possible. For example, owners of large fields only take care of the tulips and ignore the rest of their farmlands under the influence of the glow.
Oh God, oh God.
Thus, tulips can spread until they capture all territories, and people will treat them with love because of their hypnotic effect. Therefore, it's crucial to keep tulips in an isolated greenhouse. Employees of the SCP Foundation water them every day and don't allow them to get out of the area. Object SCP-2559-J. While conducting research in one of the laboratories, a scientist accidentally opened a portal to another dimension. Little kittens began to come out of this portal in an endless stream. There's an infinitely huge world of kittens on the other side. If you pick up one of them, it will turn out to be an ordinary little kitty. The portal is located deep underground. It's not yet known how to close it. As a person approaches the doorway, they find themselves under the influence of cute kittens. Now, they're falling out into our reality at a rate of 3 kittens per second. SCP-999 is a large moving mass of transparent orange slime. It looks like jelly and has the viscosity of peanut butter. The shape and size of the creature are constantly changing. The object's surface is covered with a thin, flexible membrane that prevents the mass from spreading in different directions. It's a friendly creature that likes to play with people.
So cute.
It jumps on a person, hugs them, and makes gurgling sounds. SCP-999 emits a pleasant and constantly changing odor. It can be the smell of bacon, or fresh bedding, or roses. Touching SCP-999 causes euphoria that increases with the duration of contact. After that, a person experiences happiness for a long time. The object likes to completely envelop people and tickle them from head to heels. Object SCP-831 is a colony of unknown insects, similar in appearance and properties to ordinary termites. They feed on cellulose and water with sucrose. One termite lives from 25 to 40 days. The colony should remain in an empty, bright room under constant supervision. The walls and floor in the room should be made of high-strength steel. Employees should pour water with nutrients on the floor to maintain the life of these termites. You can only enter the room in a protective suit. When the termites get access to any object, they begin to use it to make the most primitive tools. For example, if you put a pencil in a room, termites will extract graphite and use the wooden body to create chips or something else. If you constantly feed it, the colony will grow and multiply. It will use primitive tools to create modern technologies. These termites know the properties of all substances and understand how to use them to create inventions. With the help of knowledge of the laws of physics and chemistry, and using wood and graphite from the pencil, in a few days, termites can create a primitive steam engine. The longer they stay in some place, and the more they multiply, the more perfect the inventions will be.
Oh, yeah.
A colony of millions of termites can create high-tech machines or radio transmitters that are incomprehensible to people. The boundaries of inventions are unknown, but the results of their work surpass all human technologies. This is why SCP Foundation employees keep SCP-831 in an enclosed, empty room. Object SCP-1689. It's a big bag of potatoes. In stable condition, it weighs about 110 pounds. There are about 200 tubers of ordinary potatoes inside. The inner space of the bag is much larger than it looks from the outside. The size of this area is unknown, but it's completely filled with potatoes. It's impossible to determine where the bag ends.
Oh my god.
SCP Foundation employees once went on an expedition inside the bag. Scientists created a special paste that broke down starch and turned potatoes into liquid slush. This way, the employees made a tunnel for themselves by spraying the substance and raking potato muck with shovels. That's when they found out that the space had a concrete floor, concrete walls, and a ceiling. They were walking inside some kind of building filled with potatoes. The team punched a hole in the wall and left the construction. The ground was covered with dried grass. There were only potatoes around. What was at the top was unknown, since the entire space was filled with potatoes. They also found a rusty bicycle there. The expedition failed. SCP-1689 leads to a world similar to ours, but something happened there, and it began to fill up with potatoes. Object SCP-623. This is a small room built in the 60s by a professor of biochemistry. There are only these items in the room: one blue sofa, one red sofa, one green sofa, one white plastic chair, one round table decorated in the same colors as the sofas, 7 chairs around the round table, and 7 multicolored lighting fixtures. All the furniture is nailed to the floor. Strange patterns are painted on the walls. They perfectly match the style and the location of the furniture. The acoustics and the appearance of the room, as well as the arrangements of all the objects, have a strong, pleasant effect on a person.
Oh, yes.
Inside the room, people feel harmony and happiness. They relax and become kind and harmless. Because of the feeling of peace and serenity, people can't take the furniture out of the room. They just want to dance, laugh, hug the table, lie on the floor, and cry with joy. But as soon as they leave the room, they immediately become angry, aggressive, and sad. The real world outside the room seems to be a dangerous and dark place. If you stay inside the object for more than a few minutes and then go out, you can lose your mind.
This may sound mind-boggling, but scientists found a 385-million-year-old root network. Yeah, it's like a fossilized web of roots that's got them all excited. They're reimagining what the world's first forest might have looked like, and let me tell you, it's not what you'd expect. Under an old highway department quarry near Cairo, New York, they found the remains of a mighty and mature old-growth forest. This place was home to at least 3 of the world's earliest tree-like plants, but these plants, in fact, looked nothing like trees. One of them looked like giant stalks of celery. The second type resembled pine trees with hairy fern-like fronds for leaves. And the third plant was like a palm tree with a bulbous base and fern-like branches. It's like they couldn't decide what they wanted to be when they grew up. But here's the kicker. These primordial trees were quite old and large, so they weren't packed densely together. They were relatively scattered across a floodplain that ebbed and flowed with the seasons. And even though dry periods were a regular part of the cycle, these tree-like plants thrived in semi-arid conditions. Their roots had adapted to the possibility of short-term flooding, which is confusing because they're not supposed to survive in those conditions. But wait, it gets even weirder. Other trees in the area came more prepared for bouts of water scarcity. There were extinct pine tree-like plants with deeper root systems that could spread 36 feet wide and 23 feet deep. These guys were more advanced than the fern-like trees and had true leaves that could photosynthesize. It's like they were showing off or something. So why did the fern-like trees dominate prehistoric deltas, while the pine-like trees dominated the floodplains? It's like they didn't even care about setting up near rivers or water sources that could carry their genes farther afield. Maybe they were just rebels without a cause, doing their own thing and not caring what anyone else thought. In any case, this finding has got evolutionary ecologists all excited. They're saying that the earliest trees could colonize a range of environments and weren't limited to wet areas. Who knew trees were so versatile?
As an experienced sailor and the first man to ever sail non-stop on his own around North and South America, Matt Rutherford has seen a lot during his voyages. But what he saw in 2013 while sailing through the waters of the Atlantic with his colleague surely stands out. Some 800 miles off the coast of Bermuda, not far away from the famous Bermuda Triangle, they noticed a boat that seemed to be moving by itself. The sails weren't up and the motor wasn't running. The sailors decided to check if there was someone who needed their help aboard, so they moved closer to the mysterious ship. Once they got there, things only got weirder, as they realized there wasn't a living soul aboard. Rutherford started filming to document their discovery. The boat looked so awfully abandoned that they expected to find some pretty scary things in there. But it didn't stop Rutherford from searching the vessel. The boat, which turned out to be named Wolfhound, looked like an upscale one, probably costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was pretty weird to find it floating by itself in the middle of the ocean. It seemed like whoever abandoned it was leaving in a rush. There were clothes and other personal belongings all over the main cabin. Some parts of the ceiling had fallen and some drawers had popped open. The brave sailors decided to tow the ghost ship back to Bermuda. It wasn't easy because Wolfhound was bigger and heavier than their boat. After days at sea, the crew was running low on fuel and asked a passing freighter to stop and give them some gas. They kept pulling Wolfhound until the tow line got wrapped around the rudder and they realized they could get stranded in the Bermuda Triangle. So they had to abandon the ship. What really happened and how Wolfhound ended up in the middle of the ocean will probably remain a mystery. Rumor has it that it belonged to a member of the Royal Irish Yacht Club. The ship was going on its first voyage from Connecticut to Bermuda and then Antigua. It got in a terrible storm around 400 miles away from Delaware. The winds were so strong that the yacht suffered 2 knockdowns. A Greek cargo ship rescued the crew. They left the ship with an emergency beacon on. The rescued crew members shared that they saw the ship sink, which only adds more questions to the story. How did it get back to the surface? Does the Bermuda Triangle have anything to do with that? Christopher Columbus himself reported some unusual compass activity going on in this mysterious area while he was on his way to the New World. Despite the stories of more than 50 ships and 20 planes disappearing in the area, it remains one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. It could make sense because the busier the area, the more accidents happen there. But then again, it's not the number of disappearances that makes the place so mysterious. It's the lack of explanation and wreckage lost for good. The first ever confirmed ship to vanish in the Bermuda Triangle was the USS Pickering. In 1800, it departed from the US on its way to the West Indies. The ship sailed into the Bermuda Triangle along with its 90-man crew. No one ever heard anything from them ever since. The popular explanation is that the ship was taken out by a storm. But because no one found any wreckage, we'll never know for sure. The largest ship that has ever disappeared in this mysterious area was the USS Cyclops. In March 1918, carrying a crew of 306 people, the USS Cyclops left Barbados and headed home to Baltimore. The ship passed through the Bermuda Triangle on its journey and vanished into thin air, or rather, water. The Cyclops never sent any distress signal and disappeared without any explanation or trace. The Bermuda Triangle isn't the only place in the world where ships go missing or mysteriously resurface. One of the most famous ghost ship stories would be of SS Bechimo. The large cargo steamer was built in Sweden. On October 1st, 1931, it got caught in pack ice. The crew decided to wait it out and managed to break free after a couple of days, only to get trapped again in less than a week. This time, they didn't manage to make it out. A rescue team went by air to save 22 of the crew members. 15 other members stayed in a wooden shelter they built not far away from the ship. Their plan was to wait out the winter and get back aboard. At the end of November, a strong blizzard was rushing through the area. When it was over, Bechimo seemed to have gone away with the storm. The captain decided it must have broken and sunk, but a few days later, a local hunter informed them that he had seen the ship around 45 miles away from their camp. The crew managed to find the ship and took the most valuable cargo from its hold. They had fears that Bechimo wouldn't live through that rough water, but it did manage to survive after all. Once the ice was gone, it floated away and ended up drifting along the shores of Canada and Alaska. Many people reported seeing the ghost ship in an open sea. Some even tried to board it to save the ship, but the weather didn't allow it to happen. The last time someone saw SS Bechimo was in 1969, 38 years after its crew had left it. It could still be drifting somewhere in the ocean. The story of MV Hoita happened in the South Pacific. The ship was originally a wooden luxury yacht. After serving for 20 years to various owners, it became a merchant ship. In 1959, it set on a trading voyage that was supposed to last around 2 days. When it didn't reach its destination on time, no one was worried at first as things happen in the open waters. After another day, and no distress signals from the Hoita, it was obvious that something serious was going on with it. There were 25 people aboard, and their families wanted to find them. A search and rescue crew worked for 6 days looking for the ship, or at least its wreckage, in an area of nearly 100,000 square miles. That's 1.5 times as big as Florida. Sadly, the mission had come back with no results. It seemed like Hoita had disappeared without a trace. A month later, another merchant ship noticed Hoita drifting in the ocean, miles and miles away from its original route, and none of the crew members or passengers were on board. The cargo had also disappeared. The lifeboats were also gone, so the people must have escaped the ship hoping to save themselves. It turned out that the crew had been trying to get help as they tuned the radio to the International Distress Channel. But the damaged cable didn't let them send the signal any further than 2 miles. It also looked like when they were leaving the ship, the crew took the logbook with them, and we still don't know what exactly happened to Hoita. Family members of those who were on board are still looking for answers. One professor claims it must have been a corroded pipe that leaked and flooded the vessel, but we'll most likely never know for sure. In the Pacific Ocean, near Japan, there is an area nicknamed the Devil's Sea. It's believed to be one of the 12 vile vortices around the Earth. Some people claim that vile vortices have weird things going on in them because the pull of the planet's electromagnetic waves is stronger there than anywhere else. The most famous ship that disappeared in the area was a fishery patrol vessel in 1952. The ship went there to investigate the vessels that went missing previously and disappeared along with 31 crew members. Scientists who don't believe it was a mysterious disappearance blame the underwater volcano eruption for what happened.
The coldest part of our planet, Antarctica, keeps surprising us. Take a look at this waterfall named Blood Falls. Reddish water falls from the white ice. Scientists concluded that the color is related to iron. The water coming from the glacier oxidizes and rusts when it's exposed to oxygen, and the red color occurs. Step on Mount Gandig. It lays eggs. Well, maybe not real eggs, but the stones certainly look like dinosaur eggs. That's why the mountain got its fame. Let's call them stone eggs, formed in one part of the mountain over 500 million years ago. Interestingly, this phenomenon repeats once every 30 years. Eggs come out in various sizes and shades. The stones appear on the surface of the cliff. A study made in the area has revealed that the composition of the stones of the cliff isn't similar to other parts of the mountain. Here, calcareous rocks rule. They're more prone to erosion. They ripen off day by day. It took 3 decades for the stones to get to the egg shape. Yet, it's still a mystery how these rock formations can be so perfectly spherical and smooth. According to scientists, every stone egg has an organic core. They're made of shells, plant remains, fish teeth, and skeletons. Maybe this has something to do with it. Gulu village is close to the stone eggs. Locals believe that these eggs are sacred. Villagers associate it with good fortune. In fact, nearly every family has one of these eggs in their house. Unfortunately, there are only about 70 eggs left, so if you want to see them, you gotta hurry up. The Richat structure is a circular geological phenomenon in the Sahara Desert near Mauritania. It's made out of rocks in layers, and these layers look very much like rings. No wonder the unique structure even got NASA's attention. Up from the sky, the geological feature seems to be swirling and spinning. Scientists are still not sure how these rings got there. Some say it was an asteroid impact. Many others believe that it was a natural geological process. To them, the Richat structure is an uplifted and eroded dome. Geologists often classify it as a domed anticline. The scientists discovered that the rocks at the center are older than the ring-shaped outer rocks, so it seems like the stones have been eroded to flat rock layers. Anyway, there's no valid explanation for this phenomenon, and the 28-mile-long mystery of the Sahara is still to be solved. Number 4 is Rapa Nui, or Isla de Pascua, but I bet you know it as Easter Island. Yeah, it's got 3 names. It was discovered by Jacob Roggeveen, who actually never intended to look for that island. He just casually landed there one Sunday. That's where the name comes from. Jacob was supposed to find Terra Australis. Disclaimer, it's not Australia. This one never existed and was nothing but a hypothetical continent. Plus, he wanted to peek at Davis Land, which was believed to have once been seen by Edward Davis, the pirate, not Edward Davis the saxophone player. Jacob failed at that too, though nobody ever saw that island except for the pirate Davis. Jacob may have failed to discover some lands he wanted to, but he discovered Easter Island instead. This is an island and special territory of Chile, located in the southeastern Pacific Ocean. It's on my list because nearly 1,000 stone statues called moai were found there. They were created by the Rapa Nui people. Nearly all statues represent gigantic heads, but there are also a small number of figures kneeling with their hands over their stomachs. Each statue represented chiefs or other important members of Easter Island society. To curve those statues, the locals used volcanic stones that were softened. Our next stop is the gateway to the underworld. Nah, don't worry. This is just how people labeled Darvaza gas crater in Turkmenistan. This giant natural gas crater has been there for 5 decades. This crater is continuously burning gases. The president of the country wants experts to find a way to extinguish this continuous firing pit. This site was created by people accidentally in 1971 while working on a natural gas project. Ever since then, the flames have been on, and it's become a tourist attraction. Mysterious constructions are sometimes built in our era, too. We don't have to go millions of years ago to long-gone civilizations. Edward Leedskallen single-handedly built a structure called Coral Castle in Homestead, Florida. He didn't use any large machinery. He carved and sculpted more than 1,100 tons of coral rock in 28 years until 1951. It's a mystery how he managed to do it all by himself. Leedskallen sculpted the sedimentary rock into different objects, such as walls, tables, chairs, a fountain, and a sundial. There's of course a legend behind this mystery too. He was inspired to build the structure after being abandoned by his fiancée on their wedding day. Uh-oh, runaway bride. Well, he wanted to prove his love to her and the world, so he wanted to do something extraordinary. Well, he definitely nailed it. Now let's talk a little bit about the mystery of the Namibian fairy circles. There are millions of circular patches in hundreds of miles ranging from 10 to 65 feet in diameter. They're called fairy circles because they look like a fairy or an otherworldly creature made them. These are essentially oval-shaped soil surrounded by grass. There are a lot of local beliefs surrounding the creator of these marks, yet science says something else. Biologists and mathematicians have been puzzled by the mystery of the Namibian fairy circles for decades. There is more than one theory to explain this phenomenon. Here's one popular theory. The water is limited in the desert, so plants compete to reach the water. Some plants expand and thrive into a patch, but smaller plants nearby cannot get the necessary water to live. In the end, some vegetation disappears, and the remaining ones stay at the patch's edges. That's why they form such regular distant gaps. What if I tell you that there is a hill in Leh City, India, where instead of rolling downwards, things roll uphill? It's an optical illusion. The road looks like it's a sloping hill because of its surrounding landscapes, yet the road actually goes down. These kinds of hills are called magnetic hills or gravity hills. Scientific explanations vary. The most common theory says that the hill has such a strong magnetic force that it can pull cars in the vicinity. Now, how about seeing some flaming rocks? Yanartash spread over an area of over 3 square miles. The place is located on a rocky mountain in southwest Turkey near the town of Çağrıoğlu. Yanartash got its name from its appearance. It literally means flaming stone. The rocks have been flaming for at least 2,500 years, and they'll probably keep burning for the coming decades. The mountain where the rocks are is an inactive volcano, so it's full of tiny fumaroles that release gases such as methane. The gas ignites when it comes into contact with oxygen and creates the flaming effect. And by the way, back in the day, sailors used the flames as a natural lighthouse, as it's really close to the sea. Today, it's more of a tourist attraction though. Hikers love it too. Now, walk on this frozen Lake Abraham in Canada. In winter, the frozen water gets filled with ice bubbles. It looks magical, but these white orbs aren't that safe. They consist of flammable methane gas. Ew. Beauty can be misleading. The next one is from Racetrack, Death Valley, USA. There is a dry lake bed with moving rocks. Now these odd rocks look as if they've been pushed or dragged by someone or something. They leave both a trail and a mystery behind. The force behind all this is now understood. Surprise! It's the wind and some ice. Scientists say the wind pushes the rocks during brief windows when the soil is covered with ice. Now, I can't help.
Are you used to picking up hitchhikers on your long commute to work? You might want to hear about the hitchhiker road scam. This trick preys on unsuspecting drivers. The scam typically starts with a person posing as a hitchhiker who flags down a car on the side of the road. They may claim to be stranded or in need of a ride to a nearby town or city. In some cases, the hitchhiker may ask the driver to pull over at a specific location, such as a gas station or convenience store, where they will then disappear with the driver's money or other valuables. This scam can also be done in groups, where a bunch of people will flag down a car and ask for a ride, and once the car is on the move, they will threaten the driver and steal money, valuables, or even the car itself. It's important to be aware of this scam and to always be cautious when picking up hitchhikers. It's best to avoid giving money or other valuables to anyone who claims to need a ride, and to never pull over at a location that is not safe or familiar. Hitchhikers are not the only reason why you might get into trouble on the road. A slice of cheese isn't something you'd expect to find on your parked car, am I right? Well, it might indicate something quite dangerous. One woman told the story of such an experience online, thinking it was just a prank made by some neighborhood youngster. She decided to call a friend and ask for help with cleaning the car up. But once the two ladies started rubbing off the melted cheese from her windshield, they saw something strange nearby. She remembered seeing a white van arriving. In it were a bunch of men, suspiciously staring at them. She wasn't alone, so she decided it was safe enough to finish cleaning up the car, even though they didn't feel comfortable being stared at. It took them almost an hour to scrape off the cheese that had melted under the heat. She did wonder, though, if this wasn't a tactic to rob a person. That's because most people would be so focused on cleaning up the mess on their car, they'd be distracted from keeping an eye on the thing they left in the car, like bags, wallets, or even recent shopping items. Or worse, what if it was a kidnapping strategy? That sticky cheese would keep a person really concentrated on fixing the car, so they wouldn't be able to see suspicious people coming at them in due course. The key takeaway from this story: if you ever see a piece of cheese on your car, might as well leave it as it is, as long as it's not blocking your view and it doesn't really affect your driving. Your safest bet is to just clean it at home, or take it to the nearest car wash. They'll know the best way to clean up the vehicle without ruining the paint. Sure, the piece of cheese on a car scam might just be a coincidence, but some scams out there are more legitimate, with this next one being quite the unusual method when it comes to snatching away other people's cars. If you notice a t-shirt or a hoodie on your windshield, or even wrapped between your wiper blades, don't be so quick to take it away. Again, it can be placed there on purpose to distract you while your car gets taken away. Drive away as quickly as possible if you can, and get to a safe location that's well lit and filled with many people. There you can remove whatever object you have on the car without any risks. Some people have even found money under their wiper blades. It's easy to imagine that those who left it there probably had the same intention in mind. There are methods to help when it comes to decreasing your odds of getting your car snatched away. Keep your tires turned to the curb whenever you park it. If your car wheels are in that position, thieves are less likely to be able to move around with the vehicle. They'll see that your car requires more time and energy to be moved, so it'll become less of a target. Sadly, scams on the road are quite common, and one of the most widespread types is the infamous tow truck scam. This scam involves leaving oil, metal nails, or glass shards on the road and waiting for drivers to fall into the trap. If your car gets damaged in such a situation, the scammers will suddenly appear out of nowhere and offer to provide towing service at extremely high prices. They'll try to pressure you into using their services because most of the time, they place these traps in strategic locations. They make sure people get stranded where there's low visibility and no gas station in sight where you can assess the damage done to your car. In a situation where you have no other option but to give consent for them to tow your car, they'll also take advantage of the situation and take it to workshops unapproved by your insurance company. This means you'll have to pay even more money to get your car back. If you've been a driver for long enough, you know that the driver who rear-ends another vehicle is always at fault. That's because you should always keep a comfortable distance from the car in front of you, so you can safely stop the car in case of an emergency. Some scammers will take advantage of this by repeatedly braking suddenly, causing you to hit them. This dangerous tactic is used to get money for supposed damages, and even for make-believe medical expenses. To avoid falling victim to this scam, you should reduce your speed and keep a safe distance, especially from suspicious vehicles or chaotic drivers. If a scammer continues to bother you in traffic, the best course of action is to drive to the nearest police station and report them. Picture this. You're driving on the road, and suddenly a motorcyclist gets your attention and points out that your wheels are smoking. You quickly pull over to the side of the road. The motorcyclist then offers to help by calling a mechanic to check your wheels. Surprisingly, the mechanic gets there really fast, but proceeds to disable your braking system while inspecting the cause of the smoke. He then asks you to test your brakes, which of course won't be working since he's already disabled them. Pretending to be helpful, he offers to fix your brakes for you, but will charge an enormous price for it. Moral of the story, stick to your trusted mechanic or towing company. You never know who you'll find on the road. Some scams aren't even that. They're just urban legends. Many people claim to have seen the wrong way man on the roads. One version of this story mentions a man stuck driving down one-way streets in the opposite direction, causing chaos and confusion as other drivers try to avoid him. The man is said to be crazed and dangerous, with a wild look in his eyes and a penchant for reckless driving. Other stories say he's not even driving, but that once you've seen this mysterious person on the side of the road while driving home, you should turn around to keep from going back to your house for at least a week. That is, if you don't want anything bad to happen. There are countless stories of near misses and close calls with this mysterious figure. Some even say that they've been hit by the man and that they suffered serious injuries as a result. Despite the many sightings and stories, there's no concrete evidence to suggest that the wrong way man actually exists. Many experts believe that the legend is simply a cautionary tale, meant to remind people to be aware of their surroundings and to drive safely. However, the legend persists and continues to be passed down through generations, making it one of the most enduring urban myths of all time.
All right, Freddy Krueger lovers, this story is for you. Imagine the scene. You go to bed after a long, busy day, but in the middle of the night, your peaceful dream gets interrupted by an unexpected guest, and he looks like this. You've never seen this strange face before. He says something nice to you, or maybe he begins to threaten and even chase you all over the place. Also, he might just stare at you in silence with a mysterious Mona Lisa smile. You wake up the next morning. Phew, thank goodness it was just a dream. You scroll down your feed and suddenly, the very same face is looking back at you from the screen. Is that even possible? Well, yes and no. This man is an urban legend that has haunted many people's dreams in recent decades. According to the story, he first started appearing in dreams in the 1980s, and the first sketch of his face was created in a New York mental clinic in the winter of 2006. One patient of a well-known psychiatrist drew a portrait that eventually went viral. According to her, this man has been repeatedly appearing in her dreams, although she's never seen him in the waking world. And unlike Freddy, he acted pretty friendly and even offered her some advice on her private life. Soon after that, another patient noticed the portrait on the doctor's desk. He recognized that face and claimed to be dreaming of him regularly too. The second patient has never seen this man beyond the dream world either. The psychiatrist found this case curious and showed the portrait to some of his colleagues. Multiple patients also recognized this face and said they'd been seeing this man frequently in their own dreams. And from that time until today, thousands of alleged witnesses all over the globe reported the very same story in plenty of variations. A website creator from Italy, Andrea Natella, told the media that he first dreamt of this man in the winter of 2008. In his dream, he received a very specific message from this man who told him to create a website dedicated to solving the mystery of his appearance. According to Natella, he decided to follow this instruction and made an online platform aimed at collecting stories shared by dreamers all over the world. The website gained a lot of attention and soon became a viral sensation. Some people posted funny and cute stories. For example, this man appeared in a dream as a father figure, giving wise fortune cookie advice. Or as a romantic partner with gifts and flowers, taking the dreamer on a fancy date. One of the witnesses claimed to have dreamt about this man being a school teacher from Brazil with 6 fingers on his right hand. But others reported experiencing some creepy nightmares that made them wake up shaking and sweating. There's little information about the voice of this mysterious guy, perhaps because it's typically harder for the human brain to remember sounds from dreams compared to pictures. However, there are some common trends in this man's message, such as telling dreamers to go north. Of course, thousands of people tried to find an actual living human that looks exactly like this man. They sent Natella many letters with different guesses, from ordinary people from the block to celebrities. Some suggested movie characters like the man from Another Place from Twin Peaks. English composer Andrew Lloyd Webber also joined the list, and even an Indian guru named Arudkanan Aya. But despite the variety of wild guesses and funny memes, the original This Man was never found. Over the years, many brave minds tried to crack this mystery, which was getting more and more viral, and multiple theories popped up. Let's take a look at some of them. Remember the iconic dream surfer played by Leonardo DiCaprio? Well, the first theory is kinda similar to the famous movie plot. It suggests that this man is a real person who can enter people's dreams using some secret psychological skills. Unfortunately, this theory has the lowest scientific credibility, which isn't surprising. Unmasking is the last thing that dream surfers need, right? While some believed that this man is a superhero who shows his actual life face, others thought he looked completely different in the waking world. Meanwhile, more pessimistic individuals suspected a global brainwashing experiment going on behind those innocent, fluffy eyebrows. But since the dream space is one of the most poorly explored territories, it's pretty hard to get solid evidence to support any of these ideas. Another popular explanation is based on Carl Jung's psychoanalytical theory. It suggests that this man is an archetypal image from the collective unconscious. It visits the dreamer to point at particularly sensitive subjects and helps release psychic power to cope with hard times. Some take mysticism to the next level and associate this man with the universal consciousness. Those who adhere to this theory believe that their creator takes this specific form to communicate through their dreams. That's why the orders they receive from him must be followed undoubtedly. Pretty scary, huh? Science offers a simpler explanation, though. This theory is a mix of psychology and sociology. It claims that the whole "this man" phenomenon has arisen and developed thanks to imitation. People who come across the picture and his story get deeply impressed, and after that, they just begin seeing him in their dreams. In simple words, he only haunts those who make him a thing. And there's another curious explanation which is based on humans' tendency to forget faces from their dreams. Let's say you're dreaming of your favorite actor. Then he turns into your uncle. And then he smoothly takes the form of your yoga teacher, who you only met once 10 years ago. This character tells you something important or just leaves some specific emotional impression. You wake up in the morning still feeling this aftertaste, but you have no clue who exactly you were dreaming of. That's when the daytime recognition theory steps in. It claims that the brain uses this man's face to fill the void when the person is trying to remember the dream in a waking state. It chooses this particular face just because the dreamer remembers it more vividly. Okay, but this explanation only works for those who dreamt of this man after seeing his portrait. But what about those who didn't? Can the human brain actually create any new faces in dreams? According to science, the answer is no. Every individual you dream of has been someone you have either known or merely came across. Of course, you may dream of someone you barely recognize because you've seen them only once, but the brain remembers everything. It keeps a library of all the hundreds of thousands of faces that you see every day. So, according to science, this man is either your old friend or a system bug. As creepy as it sounds. Are you scared yet? Take it easy. In 2010, the website creator Andrea Natelli made a post where he confessed that the story of this man was just a prank. Natella never verified whether this prank had a commercial purpose, but still, he managed to gain attention in Hollywood. A production company named Ghost House Pictures purchased this man's website domain, and in 2010, they announced plans to make a horror movie based on this epic viral trend. Their press release promised a story about a common man who discovers that people he has never met are seeing him in their dreams. And now he's on a mission to find out why he's the source of nightmares happening all over the globe. However, no further statements about the movie have ever since been made. Is it because of business calculations or this man's curse? I guess we'll never know. Prank or not, people to this day keep on sharing fresh stories about this man visiting them in their dreams. There are more urban legends about haunted dreams than you don't want to Google before bedtime. But for now, have a good night, my curious friends.
It's a beautiful day. A family's having a picnic on a creek in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Everything seems normal. But suddenly, they spot a thin woman in an old-fashioned gown floating over the water towards a hill. The picnic instantly turns into a horror movie. The lady vanishes just to reappear a moment later much closer. Before the family manages to react or say hi, she disappears again. This story happened in the 1930s and was later told by the family's son, Patricio Lujan. The mysterious lady left no footprints, and the family was sure they'd met a local celebrity. The Weeping Woman, or La Llorona, is one of the major spooky figures in Mexican folklore. Although no one knows exactly when or where the tale originated, it's been part of the culture since the conquistadors' days. La Llorona is a wailing phantom, usually depicted as a tall, pretty woman in a white gown with long black hair. But those who claim to see her warn that her beauty is deceiving. She can attack people and even drag them into the water. The details of the legend vary, but here's the most common narrative. There once lived a Mexican woman, Maria, who was very beautiful. One day, a man of a higher social status visited her village, fell in love, and they got married. The couple lived peacefully, isolated from the husband's high-class roots, and they had several children. But unlike Cinderella, Maria didn't live happily ever after. Her husband got bored and began to disappear for extended periods of time. Some versions say he abandoned Maria to marry a woman of higher status. Others say he was drinking and womanizing. Some speculate that he wanted to separate Maria and her children to integrate them into his aristocratic world, where their mother would never fit into. In any case, she failed to cope with his betrayal. Driven by rage, she went to the river and did something, well, unsportsmanlike, which left her husband a childless widower. So, there you have it. A regular woman turned into a monstrous phantom, La Llorona. According to the legend, she can't rest in peace because she's cursed to spend eternity wandering around rivers and lakes in search of forgiveness. Some say she may kidnap other children, confusing them with hers. But according to other versions, this phantom prefers to haunt unfaithful husbands and bad mothers. It's no wonder that parents use this legend to scare kids and blackmail them into obedience. But hey, there's more to this story than meets the eye. Let's take a look at the historical context in which La Llorona emerged. In the 16th century, Mexico was facing disputes with the Spanish conquistadors. Meanwhile, the Outlanders' leader, Hernán Cortés, had a relationship with the local woman known as La Malinche. As part of the peace agreement, 20 indigenous women, including La Malinche, were doomed to serve Cortés and his European fellows. Born to a noble family, La Malinche had some useful skills and a diplomatic approach. First, she became Cortés's personal translator, and then his mistress and mother of his son. La Malinche didn't get her happily ever after either. Cortés abandoned her to marry a Spanish lady. As for their son, he was recognized as legitimate, separated from his mother, and sent to Spain for education. The majority of historians agree that La Malinche played a crucial role in the country's transformation. Some call her a traitor, others believe she couldn't have acted differently in those circumstances. In any case, the similarities between the legend of La Llorona and La Malinche are obvious. Both were neglected by a wealthy outlander who wanted to take their children away. And both stories can be seen as an embodiment of misunderstanding between indigenous people and incoming Europeans. So the reason La Llorona is such an iconic figure lies in the cultural climate. Her myth tells us what La Malinche might have done had she allowed anger to get the best of her. Some believe that La Llorona is challenging traditional patriarchy, while others see her as a sad symbol of despair. But for those who claim to meet her in real life, this wailing phantom is more than just a spooky myth. At first, people reported seeing and hearing La Llorona crying near the bodies of water in Mexico, and eventually, her presence spread to nearby territories, including the United States. Over the years, the legend flourished with further details and locations, such as villages, roads, and even railway stations. There were reports about a La Llorona appearing in the back seat of those cars whose drivers refused to stop and give her a ride. So, if you ever see a spooky, wailing lady hitchhiking on the road, be prepared. It's a tricky dilemma, though. Would you rather stop and give La Llorona a ride, or drive by hoping she won't take revenge on you? Let us know in the comments. According to urban legends, the Santa Fe River is one of her favorite places to go. La Llorona has been repeatedly seen in the Public Employees Retirement Association building, which is located nearby. The local employees reported hearing her cries resounding through the walls. Moreover, they felt invisible hands pushing them while walking down the stairs. Oh my. But still meeting a phantom at your workplace is not as scary as seeing her staring at you through the window of your own bedroom. One winter night, a girl from Santa Fe, who was 12 years old when it happened, was sitting in her room with a cousin. It was snowing outside. Suddenly, they heard a noise from the street. A mysterious, pale lady was standing by the window, dressed all in white and crying. They called their parents, who rushed outside to investigate, but they found no footprints on the fallen snow. It's getting creepier. Here's a story posted online by a woman from Lompoc, a small town in California. One night, when she was only 8 years old, she had a huge dispute with her mom. Finally, she was told to go to bed. She tossed and turned, but she couldn't fall asleep. Suddenly, she noticed someone standing by her bed. It was a lady in a black dress. She had a creepy smile on her face and 2 black holes instead of eyes. Her long black hair was blowing in the wind. The mysterious guest wouldn't go away, so they kept on staring at each other for a while. And then the girl got tired and fell asleep. After that, she began to experience strange events in that house after that very night. It's no wonder that this wailing entity has inspired so many plays, TV shows, and movies over the years. The earliest written reference dates to the late 19th century. Mexican poet Manuel Carpio wrote a sonnet, La Llorona. However, his poem is about a phantom of a woman whose life was taken by her husband. One of her latest appearances on the screen was in 2018. She was portrayed as a main villain in the movie The Curse of La Llorona. Also, this phantom has a huge impact on music. You must have heard about the Mexican folk song titled La Llorona. It's been out there for so long that nobody knows its exact origin. It was first recorded in 1949 by a famous composer and songwriter, Andres Gines Rosa, and has since been performed and covered by numerous musicians all over the globe. In 2017, the song popped out in a Disney film, Coco. If you're in love with the spooky and bright features of Mexican folklore, then you should check out this cartoon. It's the story of a young Mexican guitar player who's taking a trip around the fancy afterlife world to investigate his family's history. And remember, if you ever find yourself in the middle of a forest alone at night and hearing a weeping lady, don't rush to run away. Chances are, you'll have the most genuine talk about the ugly side of patriarchy and make a new friend. In the meantime, stay safe and don't forget to subscribe.
On a rainy evening in a dark, dense forest, you hear the crunch of branches. Your heart starts beating faster. You're afraid to look in the direction of the sound, but you're still slowly turning your head. A feeling of horror freezes you. You can't escape, and you're sure that some animal is looking at you now. By this point, it stopped raining. An ominous silence has fallen over the forest. The clouds disperse, and the dim light from the full moon illuminates the trees, among which you notice a human silhouette. He's tall and is hiding in the shadows. He isn't moving, waiting for your next actions. 2 glowing red eyes light up his dark face. Terrified, you point the flashlight beam at the monster. The scary creature opens its wide wings and flies away into the night. You've just seen the Mothman, one of America's most famous monsters. This is an urban legend, but the monster really exists and doesn't exist at the same time. It all started in West Virginia, in the small town of Point Pleasant in the early 20th century. It was an industrial place with factories producing harmful toxic substances. Closer to the 50s, all these plants were closed, but people didn't dispose of waste from the factories properly. Therefore, harmful substances began to penetrate the surrounding nature and pollute forests and water. These events became a prologue to the appearance of the Mothman. For the first time, city residents heard about the monster in the 60s. 4 young people were driving past the dark forest and stopped by a local power plant. There, they saw a big man with red eyes and wide wings, like those of a moth. The teenagers were terrified and immediately drove away from that place. They came to the local sheriff and told him everything that had happened. The police quickly examined the forest and the area near the station, searching for the monster, but found nothing. Meanwhile, a local newspaper wrote an article about it. Soon, other people also began to report that they had seen a mysterious creature. Some thought the Mothman was a human or an animal that mutated after getting poisoned by toxic substances. These rumors were nothing but fairy tales from sci-fi movies. So, people started ignoring these stories after a while. Then, after the monster's first appearance, a catastrophe happened in the city. The Silver Bridge, the main road to Point Pleasant, couldn't withstand the traffic before the winter holidays. The bridge collapsed under the heavy weight and many cars fell down. The tragedy brought a lot of grief to the town, and people were trying to figure out how could this happen. Some suggested that the crash could be related to the Mothman. No, he didn't destroy the bridge. but people said they had seen this creature many times before the tragedy. It looked like the Mothman was a harbinger of trouble. Further investigation revealed that the road collapsed because of poor bridge maintenance. But this version faded amid the rumors about the Mothman. After the crash, reports about the Mothman stopped. People no longer saw the monster and forgot about it. But then, in the 70s, author John Keel wrote a book about the mysterious monster from Point Pleasant. He liked discussing stories about extraterrestrial civilizations and other urban legends, so he couldn't miss the case of the Mothman. He wrote about how the unknown beast could be an unconscious premonition of Point Pleasant's inhabitants of the tragedy on the bridge. The book became popular all over the US. John Keel made the Mothman a superstar. Hollywood created a movie based on the book, and the small town became the center of attraction for thousands of tourists. The Mothman has become as popular as the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. People organize an annual festival in honor of this character. If earlier the beast was a harbinger of disaster, now it's become the cause of the economic growth of Point Pleasant. Tourists come to get in touch with the legend and spend a lot of money. Locals open cafes and hotels, organize tours, and make souvenirs. One sculptor even installed a sinister monster statue. The Mothman has evolved from local myth to a brand. In this case, it turns out that even though he doesn't exist, it's not entirely true. Many messages about the Mothman appear all over the world. It's said that people see him shortly before major disasters, but of course, it's yet to be proven. One guy did research and found out that all the books and materials about the Mothman were written by fans of myths and urban legends, and that there was not a single scientific proof or observation that the monster really existed. Now, remember the events associated with the Mothman? The collapse of the bridge? The release of toxic substances and other tragedies? The flying creature with red eyes has become the embodiment of mass hysteria. When many people are under stress or grief, they may experience the same unconscious reaction. In such a depressed state, people really begin to believe and see things that don't exist. A similar feeling appears during a strike or other mass events. You may disagree with the majority opinion, but when you find yourself in a crowd that demands something, you seem to be infected by their mood. This is quite a typical thing for our mentality. When you're experiencing grief along with hundreds and thousands of people around, your brain becomes sensitive to any information. You may see a large heron or an owl in this state and mistake it for the Mothman. And other people will unknowingly support you and believe in the monster. There have been many cases of mass hysteria in the world. One of the most striking ones happened in France in the 16th century when the inhabitants of Strasbourg began to dance for several weeks. This event is called the Dancing Plague. At first, one woman started dancing in the city's central square. A week later, other locals joined her, infected with her bout of sinister fun. According to one version, the mass dancing hysteria began against a backdrop of hunger and diseases that Europe was experiencing at that time. People were under constant stress, and their minds decided to relieve stress in an unusual way. Another version says that people were poisoned by some fungus that grew on wheat grains. The fungus somehow affected people's psyche and made them dance. But let's get back to our monster. In addition to the stress associated with the collapse of the bridge and the release of toxic waste in the forest, people could have been impressed by herons and owls. People called the Mothman bird-like in the first reports because of his red eyes and wings. Therefore, some researchers claimed that the residents of Point Pleasant had seen a big heron or a sandhill crane with wide wings and red markings around the eyes. The sandhill crane doesn't live in West Virginia, but it can fly over this territory and even make a stop there to have a snack. Also, people could have seen a giant owl sitting in a tree. The eyes of these animals can glow red at night. People reported seeing about 28 cranes from 2017 to 2019. Imagine living in a city where shops, streets, and monuments remind you of the Mothman. People have been talking about him for years, believing in him. And then you see a giant heron in the forest. Surely the first thing you'll think about is the Mothman. So people may be telling the truth when they say they've seen him, or at least they might believe they're telling the truth. In any case, the Mothman is neither a product of an extraterrestrial civilization nor a radioactive mutant animal. People created this creature with their minds and faith. Such things always attract people because they give us the feeling that we know something that most people don't, something mysterious. Additionally, the Mothman brings a lot of money to the residents of Point Pleasant, and it's much more profitable for them to support the rumors about the monster than to prove that it doesn't exist.